everybody. Good morning. This is Chattin with CHAP. I am your host, Ginger Wade, and today I have guests with me. It's Gillian. Oh, Gillian, how do you say your last name?
Buonanno.
Buonanno. Okay. So this is Gillian, and she's a CHAP mentor, and she is joining me today, and we're going to talk all about groups and different types of homeschool groups. But before we jump into that, I would like Gillian to tell us a little bit about herself and her homeschool experience. So take it away, Gillian.
Thanks, Ginger, for having me. So my homeschool experience. I don't know where to start. Ginger and I have had this conversation so many times, but so my homeschool experience started with my stepdaughter, I guess you could say. She was homeschooled, and I was not always a proponent of homeschooling, to be honest with you. I guess we'll start out with that. And then COVID came, and boy, did my perspective change.
Mm.
And so I just knew that things had to change. My son was not in a good situation in the public school. And I knew things had to change. And I reached out to his father and asked if we could homeschool. And he said, as long as he was involved, yes, we could homeschool. So for you parents who are going through a difficult marital time, let me just say you can homeschool while you're divorced. Involve the father. It works.
Mm.
That's just my words of wisdom. Get them involved 100%, and they will allow it. Which I did. I still send my ex-husband reports. He sees everything that Matthew is doing. I let him know the curriculum we're choosing. I offer him, would you like to have Matthew read certain books that we will work on together for English, for writing, for so it can work. But that's not what today's conversation is. Let's go back to the real conversation.
I'll make a note. We'll have another one.
Um, and so my homeschooling journey began there in COVID, mid-year, January of 2020. I took my son out of ninth grade in high school. And it's been a journey ever since, but it's been a good one and one that we're really enjoying.
Good. And you had mentioned before the show even started that you guys started a cool map project, right?
Yeah, that is why there's a mess behind my yes. Yes, my son loves local history. Actually, he loves history. Getting him to do any kind of social studies or history is never ever a problem. So I always incorporate history of some form into his writing because if I do, I never have a problem with it. So right now we're working on a local map. We actually have the local map. So if I live in northeastern Pennsylvania in a little town, Hawley. So we're working on railroad maps from when they first installed the Delaware and Hudson Railroad. And we're looking at the railroad maps and we're doing some writing and tracking of the maps and how the grounds were laid, the tracks are coming up. So we're doing a lot of that right now.
That is so cool. Yay. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so the topic at hand, we're going to talk about groups. So homeschooling in groups, different types of groups, and Gillian and I have different experiences. So that's why I invited her on so we can share about our different experiences and talk about the pros and cons of each. But I think the first question, and I think I forgot to mention this to you, Gillian, but the first question is, do I have to be in a group as a homeschooler? Of course, the answer is no.
No.
You don't have to, and it's really interesting because there's a number of people I meet feel like they need that connection and help, but there are some people who are like, man, I wish I hadn't been told that I have to be in a group. I thought that was really interesting. I saw that comment the other week. So there's some folks who just really enjoy like autonomy and, being on their own and independent and doing their own thing. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. We're just giving the group aspect here today. So you might hear us talking about co-ops, which is short for cooperatives. You're being cooperative together to teach your kids, and support groups. Chaponline.com under the resources tab has a listing of co-ops and support groups. So it doesn't necessarily say which it is, but there is a difference. So we're going to talk about that for a minute or two, and then we'll talk about our experiences. So, Gillian, what would you describe a support group as being? Like, what do you think a support group is?
A support group to me is a group of similar ideas, sounding boards. When you're not sure where to turn and you have questions, maybe not just about your curriculum, If your child's learning style is very different and you're having problems, um, for Matthew, for my son who's 16 now, he's not a morning person. He's very much a night owl. So that's a sounding board for conversation if you have other teens in the area. To me, that's the support group. My background is in academia, so I didn't need the support group of how do I look for curriculum?
Yeah.
How do I do this? For me, if I had a support group, it might be just getting Matthew out among his teenage peers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But again, he's not looking for that. He enjoys his I guess his support group is he's very into trains. So he goes to his train meetings and that's his
Yeah.
social sphere. So we
Mm-hmm.
didn't need the support group, but I know that there are parents who do. And I kind of feel that's where I came in to
Mm-hmm.
start a support group, just like-minded parents who needed a safe space event and wanted their kids to have a safe place to play. To me, that's the support group.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's absolutely, and it tends to support groups tend to be a little more, from my understanding, fluid, and like schedules
Yes,
can shift, or like field tripping and those types of things together, park dates, or could be classes in
right.
people's houses, whatever moms feel comfortable teaching, um, type things. But as opposed to say a co-op, so I've been involved with co-ops all of my life, and well, my homeschooling life, and those are more structured. There's a set day that you're meeting, a set hour. You sign an agreement typically to be part of it. Just a commitment kind of a thing, because they are more of like a weekly class. We're going to teach this class. It's going to take the whole year. So you kind of need to show up every week, and do your part in
Right.
teaching. Moms are typically teaching. So like in hours, we have a 3-hour co-op. So there's 3 different classes, and we have classes from pre-K the whole way up through senior year. And moms just teach what they feel comfortable doing. And if we want a class that doesn't have a mom that feels comfortable teaching it, we'll hire someone to come in and do it. So,
Okay.
yeah. So the co-op is definitely the more structured thing. I don't want to say it's more academic, because in a support group setting, you can learn just as much and
Nice.
as co-ops. I know the label gets put on co-ops that they're academic, but I think it's just they're more schooly, really, maybe.
Right.
So
For right.
some are really school.
Right. Sorry, Ginger. So
No,
for
go ahead.
my support group was definitely more activity. The parents wanted the kids to get out there and play. And I'm fortunate in that I have 82 acres to share with them. And so that was where we succeeded, is that we had all that place to play. We would
Yeah.
hike in the woods, we'd go down by the pond and do some school lessons, about the animals we were finding in the ponds, their habitats, but it was more geared for activity. We definitely hiked a lot of these woods.
Yeah, that's really great. So as we get it, let's talk about that a little bit more. So you said you have land, you welcome people to your house to do things. Like, talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about the things that you've done, or if you didn't have the 82 acres, maybe what you would do as a support
So
group.
that's it originally started that we were going to meet at my church. My church had offered the space and that was not a problem. Got permission. I'm fortunate that fortunate or unfortunate, however you want to call it, that I'm the secretary of the church council. And so I brought it to my church council and they approved it. It was not a problem. We were going to use the basement of my church. Um, and there was a situation that happened with the neighbors across the street. And so I just decided, you know what, let's just move it to my house until it gets resolved. And then, it was only going to take a couple of weeks, but they had a great time at my house because I had those 82 acres. And so it stayed at my house, which I'm fine with. I have no problem with it. It was supposed to be temporary, 2 or 3 weeks, but it sort of stayed. So I have those 82 acres. I have chickens. So the kids loved helping me collect eggs. They loved helping me do the fall cleanup for my garden. They had a great time. And then snow came, so we've sort of slacked off. We're going to start off up again now that spring is here. They want to help me work in my garden, which is great because I do need
Yeah.
help getting in my garden. So I'm very fortunate that way that they are embracing this as, and I cleaned up a section of the garden just for the support group. Like that's their stuff that they're going to plant. I'm very fortunate that I have the capability to do that.
Mhm.
And not, I realize that not everyone does, and you don't need to. Like your support group is your support group. This just happens to work for the families that have come. They love this. You know, they've been asking for space, and so I gave them a little bit of space in my garden to plant whatever they want.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's been a blessing in some ways.
Yeah, that's really great. So, but I was hearing in what you were saying there that you have so much flexibility in like not only where you are,
Right.
but when you're meeting. Like you said, with the winter, you tend to focus a little more on being outside, and with the winter and stuff, things back to, I mean, it could have been for illness, right? Because oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yes,
So
yes, yes. Yeah. We took January and February off. It just seemed like everybody was sore throat and
yeah.
some flu, and it just we took off January and February. Um,
Yeah. So that's that flexibility is really great because, if you have a rigid schedule, that's what do you do then? Do you have to
right.
tack the weeks on to the end of the year or what, how do you handle that? So that's one of the beautiful things about um a support group is it can be very fluid, right?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
did you have a set day that you were always like, okay, let's always meet on Thursday at 3, or did it shift?
Originally it was Mondays. It originally we were meeting Mondays, and then that stopped working for everybody. So then it just sort of became, what day are you available?
Yeah.
And that worked for me because I'm a substitute teacher in one of the school districts. So that it gave, I'm fortunate that way also that I have the flexibility to say, okay, I'm not available that day. So that's one of the other blessings is that I still see what's going on in the public schools, but I have the flexibility to say, yes, I can do that day. So
Yeah.
it's still staying at my house, which I'm surprised. I mean, um, but they love coming and just running and
Yeah.
playing, and the woods, the rivers, you know, I have to admit I'm getting a little bit nervous. You know, the wildlife is coming out, so
Uh,
the bears are here. The
oh,
other creatures are here, so I'm a little bit nervous about going into the woods. I've asked the parents, I'm like, do you still want to go hiking? They're like, sure, we still want to go hiking, but like I said, we're fortunate that we have all this land that I can share, and I'm
mm.
happy to share with them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, yeah, so that flexibility of even changing the dates, that's
Yeah.
really awesome. So you can work with each other on that. So when you let's see, how did you did you just know some ladies who wanted to meet? Like, how did you actually get your support group together?
So I was again fortunate in that way because I am an evaluator for,
Okay.
end of the year. And I had met some of these parents through evaluations, and then they said, can you do an evaluation for my friend's family? So they already knew each other. I was very fortunate that three of my families already knew each other, but they live like 20 miles in one direction, 20 miles in the other direction. And
Wow.
I was the center point for all of them to come. So when I said to them, this is where I live, one of them is down closer to Milford. One of them is out closer to Beach Lake, which is so my house was the center point, and I offered it to them. That was the fortunate thing that I
Yeah.
said, yeah, my church is originally, like I said, it was supposed to be in my church, and my church they were thrilled with that too, because my church sits on a 2-acre plot of land, and they had said to, sure, you can go walk the rivers. Sure, you can go walk down
Mhm.
by the church sits right on the Lackawaxen. So I was very fortunate that the church had said, sure, bring the kids, let
Yeah.
them come.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. So it wasn't like you were did they kind of ask you like so what like you weren't actually going out and looking for people. It just kind
No,
of
I was
happened,
not
right?
looking, I was
It
not
just
looking for this responsibility. I
yeah.
was not looking for a group. I was very happy. Matthew and I were very happy, just doing our own thing, me doing evaluations in the spring. I will say this, being a mentor, before I even joined CHAP as a mentor, I was doing mentorship for other families. It
Yeah.
wasn't like I was not looking for this. I kind of feel like God placed it in my lap.
Mhm.
Because my husband says to me all the time, he's like, who are you on the phone with now? And I said, oh, I just received an email from a family. And I seem to, as my husband says, I get the families who are very needy. They have not a lot of questions, but the children have either emotional issues, they've come through some trauma, and somehow God places them in my lap.
Mhm.
And so when the families ask me, my husband just looked at me and goes, "They God placed them in your lap again."
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay. So when they came to me and asked me, and I was like, sure. But with that came with a lot of responsibility because um, the the district where I worked, one of the teachers calls me a natural delegator. And I said, what does that mean? A natural delegator. I said, does that mean I'm bossy? She's like, no, it means you're a leader. I was like, I don't know if I'm happy to have that title or not. And so that's sort of how it started, is that these parents came to me and asked me if I knew of a group, and I didn't. Um, but I sort of started one for them because they asked me to.
Yeah.
And so that's how it grew.
Yeah. So, what I want you out there who are listening to hear is that uh, you can start your own group. If you
Absolutely.
look at our list and you don't find something that fits or that's where you are, I know when you get up to the Northeast, it's particularly hard because everyone's
Yeah.
so spaced out up there. So it just might be that you have you start your own little tiny group, and it can truly be whatever you want it to be.
It can be. I
Um,
only have
yeah,
6 families right now.
yeah.
And most of them are aged. Most of them, the children are between 8 and 12. I only have 6 families right now. I'm not saying it's closed. It is not closed. If there's other families who want to join me, you're more than welcome to.
Mhm.
Um, but and I won't say we have criteria, but we are looking for like-minded families,
Yeah, sure.
Christian conservative families
Mhm.
believe in the Bible, and that's how these families, when I was evaluating, this conversation came up, and that's what they asked me for. And so, like I said, 3 of the families already knew each other. It was just
Yeah.
that it was a distance for them to meet and play, and so that's when I opened my home to them.
Yeah. So, and that's as whether you like it or not, Gillian, you're a leader. So, it's pretty being the leader of a group. I mean, I'm going to talk about co-ops in a minute, but like the steering team there, they had to come together and decide what do we want for this group, or what does everybody want in this group, and it can be whatever you want. Again, it doesn't
Exactly.
literally be whatever you want, but just realize that, we all know that when we bring people together, we don't always agree all the time.
That
So
is
there has to
100%
be
true.
something, has to be something that's
That
going
is
to
so
keep us
true.
on the same track, or whatever track it is that we decide that that's going to be. So if you're looking to start a group, let's just keep that in the back of your mind. And it doesn't have to be like rigid in the front and blah, blah, blah front. It could just come organically as time goes on, but don't be afraid to have those conversations about it, to talk
And we did
about.
have to have, right, we
Yeah.
did have to
Yeah.
eventually have that difficult conversation that um, this is who we are.
Hmm.
This is why we joined. And before I had that difficult conversation, um, I prayed over it. I prayed over it
Absolutely.
so many times.
Uh-huh.
And I just came to a passage in Isaiah. I've been praying through Isaiah on my own. And I just came to a passage over Isaiah. And I believe it's Isaiah 31 or 32. Woe to those women who do not. And I was like, okay, I guess he's speaking to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to pray over it some more.
Yeah.
And I'm going
Yeah.
to pray
Wow.
over that some more because I didn't want to alienate anybody. But by the same token, the four of the four core families said to me, Gillian, I said, fine, we will have this difficult conversation that you're all welcome, but this is who we are. This is what we believe.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
So
again, I encourage you
it's
guys out
not an easy
there.
conversation.
Yeah, when things come up, don't be afraid to have conversations. We need to teach our children how to have conversations and be respectful to each other and hear other points of view. And y'all know it, that is not in our society right now. Right now, it's if they don't agree with you, you close your ears and you scream and you call them names and whatever. So these types of groups, you know, as leadership or just as someone who's part of a group, you're gonna have disagreements and you need to work through them. It's a great opportunity for that, for adults to work through things. And if things come up with the kids, for the kids to work through
Right.
things. So it's
And
really
you need to do it with love. And
yes.
that's the hardest thing for me was to take a step back and just say that you're always welcome, but this is who we are. This is what we believe. We can accept what you believe, but we don't have to believe it. You're more than welcome to play with our children. But please know that our children believe this, and this is what we teach our children. And the blessing in it is that the parents accepted that and still came back and are will have open ears. And when you say it with love, there's acceptance.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's good. Those are all wonderful things to learn. So, okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about co-ops. And it's funny because something popped into my head while we were talking. It's the idea of pods, like pods were the new fancy way of saying co-op or support group
Right.
since COVID. So anybody out there thinking, ooh, what's a pod and how's a pod different? It's not. It's pretty much a support group or a co-op, you know? So whatever. But so
I
co-ops.
had never heard that term until the boy that I tutored, um, his mom's like, yeah, we belong to this homeschool pod. And I'm like, what is a homeschool pod?
Same, there's nothing new under the sun. It's the same as a co-op or a support group. So the co-op part, I've been part of co-ops all of my homeschool life. So co-ops are more, the word is strict is what came to mind, but they're more scheduled. They're more, you know, regular. We had the first one I was in met every Thursday. The second one I met is every Friday. The first one I was in was 20 weeks a year. So it was 10 in the fall, 10 in the spring. It was enrichment, meaning it was a little bit, you could call it a little bit more support groupy, because it was like art and music and those drama and those types of things. We had gym class, and there might have been like a composition class where you wrote a book and you made a cool little book, you know, but
Okay.
it was definitely more enrichment focused. Now the one that I'm in now, for the senior, junior, and senior high, it's definitely academic focused. They're looking to help parents fulfill core requirements, math, science, English, history. We meet every Friday. We have 3 classes every Friday, 1 hour per class. And in those classes, the teachers teach and instruct and give assignments for the whole week. So the kids have homework to do the whole week long, and then they come back on Friday, hand it in, do speeches, whatever. That's the senior high kids. The younger kids, as they get older, like 5th and 6th grade, they might have homework. The younger kids just go to learn stuff. You know, again, it's arts and gym class and music and science and whatever and any creative mom wants to come up with. But it is you teach a class, you help someone else with their class, and you have a free period. And then we bring snacks. So we all sit in the mom's room and have snacks. So that's the nice part. And honestly, and that's where it gets a little bit support groupy is in the mom's room, right? So you have time to talk and we prayed over each other and we cried over things and we share things that work and things that don't work and, you know, whatever. We share life with each other in the mom's room. And the kids get to be together. So but that also requires commitment, like a level of commitment. The
Right.
flexibility diminishes in a situation like that because like we meet for 27 weeks. They might be 2 semester courses or 1 big year-long course, depending what it is. So the teachers need to fulfill their role to teach. You know, it's part of the deal. As they get older in our particular co-op, and I think there's a number of co-ops that do this, you can opt to pay more to just drop your kids off for class and not be there to teach.
Okay.
So that is an option, but it's only for older kids who can behave themselves without mom being present. Or at least mostly. So yeah. So yeah, and then in that, you know, you need a leadership team because it's a big thing, right? You gotta, what classes are you teaching? How do you deal with conflict? How do you make the schedule? Who's going to talk to the church? Who's, you know, dealing with all the things we need insurance. course, we all need clearances. That was something we didn't talk about your group because you're just friends meeting in a house, right? You
Right.
don't, when we're a group like we are, we need to have all the clearances, and the mandated reporter stuff. And so it gets into more of those technical things.
But I will tell you that my father-in-law went and checked our insurance to make sure, because we live with, so we have one house and then my in-laws live on the same property. He did check with the insurance to make sure that if something happened, we would be safe.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to check this. It is good to check those things. So, yeah. So then, in my co-ops, the co-ops I've been a part of, they did have statements of faith. So when we were registering for classes, we had to agree to that. And can't remember my first co-op, but this co-op, as a new mom coming in, you meet with the steering team and they get to talk to you and know you before, saying you can come into our co-op, just because we're looking for a particular, thing,
Mindset.
like you had said, yeah, a particular mindset. And I know there's groups out there that are different. They're open, everybody, and that's wonderful. And that's the thing. You get to choose what you want for you and your family, and be with like-minded people there. So there's no right or wrong way to do support group or a co-op. It's really truly just based on the group of people who decide to come together and they talk about what they want. And like the co-op I'm in, I mean, it's well established. It's a 30-year co-op. It's been around forever. So, what it is and what it, was designed to be has been around for a very long time. So it's not like they just made it up last year, so it's, and then the leadership team changes, over the years and that type of a thing. But yeah, so then as a mom, if you're in a group like a co-op, you might be asked to be part of the leadership team, which is an extra step up in responsibilities at a co-op type thing. And yeah, God places that on your heart to give you learning experiences and growing. But it's important to support the community like that, right? It's important to encourage people to continue on in their homeschooling journey and to help give guidance to that. Yeah, so that's kind of like, I don't know, is there anything you can think of that you should ask me or I should ask myself about co-ops?
I guess the word that comes with the co-op leads me to structure, right?
Mhm,
Because to me, a co-op means structure.
mhm.
And for myself, I didn't need that. Matthew and I were very happy doing
Yeah.
our own little thing. And Matthew's a different kind of kid. He likes to be with adults. He doesn't he
Mhm,
doesn't think of himself as a kid. He likes to be with the adults. So
mhm,
the thing that came to me mind with is structure.
mhm,
Um, if I was starting over again with he was 8 or 9, then I would look for the more structured co-op,
mhm.
daily. This is
Yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting because well, with my little ones, they were super social and wanted to get out and do things. And that was one way for me to do
right.
that. So that was good. And it is interesting, like in our co-op, many of our kids, they end up dual enrolling college courses. So we actually do not have very many juniors and seniors because they start to kind of fall off into
Okay.
doing other things, different things like that. So um and it's interesting, since COVID, I've been a lot more willing to be like, well, maybe we, let's analyze if we really need to go back, because our co-op, we did of course shut down for that 1.5 year, and then
Okay.
the next year they chose not to open because of all the stipulations. But then we had underground co-op,
Right.
and so kept that going. And then the year after that, I still didn't go back full time. I just did something in a friend's house. A friend of mine and we got
Right.
together. It was 1 week in her place, 1 week at my place, and we did whatever we did, science and art or whatever.
Right. Mhm.
And it was great. It was a breath of fresh air. It was something different. And we are now back at the co-op full time. She chose not to, and that's fine too. So like there's different seasons, right? You could be like,
Right.
oh, kids are young, I want them to be learning like all the art and stuff. Sometimes it's really hard to do that stuff at home because messy, or you don't have supplies, um or like in senior high, like with chemistry, if you know someone who's teaching like a real chemistry class with all the things and the beakers and the stuff that blows up and everything, you might not have that in your house. So in those ways, it's nice to get together as a group. Um, but yeah, your needs could totally change, go back and forth
Right.
even, or start your own thing or whatever. So I want you all out there to know that there's freedom in the way you do this homeschool thing. You don't have to choose something and stick with it until all your
And
kids
no,
graduate.
there's no right size for everybody. There just isn't. I've learned that there's no right size for everyone.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, let's just talk a little bit about like the pros and cons, like in what you've seen and experienced with your support group situation. We've talked a lot about these, but maybe we can like just kind of summarize them for everybody, like pros and cons of the support group style thing. Like, do you have anything you'd like to put out there?
Um, so one of the definite pros for me was the flexibility that if I couldn't meet on this date, we could change the
Yeah.
date. That was an absolute pro for me. One of the cons was that um, we didn't have a set group of expectations. We had to define that for ourselves. We knew what we were looking for, and that's why we met. And then when we got our little curveball, so to speak, we had to really refocus on why we were meeting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the co-op, you already knew what your expectations were when you
Mm-hmm.
walked in. So that
Well,
would be right.
things still come up.
Well, yes, they still do. Um, they still come up. But it's been a blessing either way.
Yeah,
Learning about it has been a blessing either way. Like I said, I wasn't looking for the blessing. I wasn't looking
yeah.
for anything. Matthew and I were perfectly happy doing our homeschool stuff together. And there is the Lake Region Homeschoolers. It's a more social group. They post events. This is where we're going to be, and sometimes we would join, sometimes we wouldn't. And Matthew and I are perfectly happy going about
Yeah,
our routine.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
but sometimes God's called me to do a little bit more. And I think that's the biggest lesson out of all of this is that
Absolutely.
in the different season that you're in, you just have to pray over it and
Mhm.
pray over it some more. And um, you'll find your answer.
Yeah.
That's the reality. You just got to pray over it. And
Hmm.
I really wasn't looking for me to go up. I have more than enough on my plate. I really didn't need to take on any more. My husband just gives me these looks like, no more. How thin can you spread yourself? Like, no more. But I've taken a step back. We're not doing every week at my house now. We're just doing every other week. And I had to do that for my own health. As you know, uh, I have a traumatic brain injury. So for my own health, I had to take a step back and
Yeah,
just say, we're
absolutely.
meeting every other week. And doing that really helped refocus the group. And I think they appreciate that um, I'm still willing to keep my house open to them, but I just had to take a step back and say every other week.
Yeah.
So
And that's another pro, right? That's being flexible
yeah,
with what
being
you're doing
flexible.
and taking care of yourself. I think we also, like you said, spread ourselves too thin. We do too much, and
Right,
our health suffers, or our relationships suffer, and
right.
God's not calling us to harm
No, he's not.
relationships and not take care of ourselves. So I think where we need to be open to what it is that he leads us to, and he might lead us into something that might scare us a little bit, but we also, like you said, bathe it in prayer, because it might be something special that he wants us to try. Or like you said, you did it for like every week for a while, but now it's 2 weeks, and then you took a break, and then you're so, and that's okay. Like changing it to fit with where you're at
Right.
in your life is absolutely acceptable, and it's good, and it's really good to learn how to listen to God in that way, right? To really, okay,
Mm.
is this where we need to be? So, and that's one of the things that I like to encourage families who are coming to look and join our co-op. I was on a leadership team for a while, and I just like to stress, it is a commitment. It's a big commitment. It's a full
Right.
school year commitment. And I know stuff comes up, and there's always grace for people who have things that come up. But you have to understand the commitment before you make the commitment, right? And
Right.
then, and also since it is a group and um we're kind of middle of the road academic, we're not super high academic, we're not out whatever total
Right.
enrichment. Everyone who comes together needs to understand this is where we're at. So you might need to expect less, or you might need to do more. And so it's one of those things where you have to understand where if you're going to come together in the community, you have to do as the community does, right? So, and that's just one of those things is a give and take in the structure of what you're doing. So you really have to pray over your family, seek the
Um,
Lord. Yeah,
yes, I'm
go
very
ahead.
fortunate that my husband is a very like-minded Christian man. I'm very fortunate and blessed by that
Mhm.
because he constantly reminds me that, the Lord doesn't call you for this. Let's pray over it. Is this
Mhm.
really I'm very blessed
Yeah,
in that way, and that he constantly reminds not just me, but my son that,
yeah.
is this what the Lord has called us to do? Let's
Mhm.
pray over it. So I'm
Mhm.
very fortunate that way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, my husband too. He's good at keeping me from doing more than what I already do.
Right, right. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
team thing, right? And sometimes you
yeah.
need other people's perspectives because again, we get this super mom
Mhm.
thinking that we need to do everything and it has to be awesome and it has to be perfect or whatever. And it's just not reality and it's not what God wants. And sometimes we just don't listen to God or we
Right.
don't
I did
pray
that,
over
I was
it.
doing it every right. I did that every week. I was doing every week, and the one week I really wasn't feeling good, and he's like, just cancel them. I was like, no, I can't. And he just looked at me. He's like, you're not going to make it today. He's like, I'll take over the group. And I was like, okay. Like, I mean, he's like, we're not going hiking today. When they came, when he's just like, we're not going hiking today. This is what we're doing. And you know what? That's okay. The kids had a
Yeah.
great time with him. It allowed me to just sit out on the porch and relax and see what the kids were. He was out there in the garden with the kids, having him clean up the garden. And you know what? It was a blessing. The kids had a great time. Parents had a great time. They just helped me
Good.
clean my garden, and they had a great time. He taught them about roots and cover crops. Like it wasn't a lesson they were looking for, but it was just such a nice,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah. And
remind
so
that,
wonderful. So wonderful that he was willing to step in there for you.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's
But he
good.
shouldn't
So
have, as he said to me, I shouldn't have had to. So
yeah,
we're
yeah,
slowing down. We're slowing down.
yeah.
So
That's good. Lesson learned. That's good.
lessons learned. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So
All right. So as we wrap up here, I do want to remind all of you out there that there's no right choice. Okay.
no.
There's no perfect situation. Um, it's going to change too. So where you are now might not be where you're at next week or in 5 years or whatever. You might need different things through those seasons and go with it. And if God is, you feel God is urging you to like start a group and get
Mhm.
together with people, go ahead and do it, give it a try. And if it doesn't work out or
Right.
it's not a failure, it's a growth opportunity, right? You've learned and
Right.
you understand yourself better and you understand your kids better and what it is that you want in a homeschool situation or learning environment. So yeah, don't feel terrified of any of it. You don't have to do a group at all, or if you do a group, try this kind and try that kind
Right.
and see, but realize like what I was saying earlier with the commitment thing with co-ops, realize what it is that the groups kind of require of you
Right.
before you jump in and make that decision. So is there anything else, Gillian, that you want people to know before we sign off for the day or anything else you want to stress about it?
No, I'm glad we covered that there is no right size, and that there is a commitment, and you really have to look at every aspect of it. And I'm glad we covered that not everything is going to be positive. Sometimes it can
Yeah,
be, but you just take that opportunity and grow from it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So doing life together always brings challenges.
Right. Yes. Yes.
But you know what? What I've been learning in my life is that it's the challenges where we grow. It's where we
Yeah.
learn to rely on Jesus. And like you said, you prayed and prayed and prayed. You're praying over things and you learn so much better how to walk in him and abide in him when there's struggles. And for
Right.
whatever reason, when it's easy, we just forget.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's good. It is good. So, okay. Well, I'm so glad you came on with me today, Gillian. This
Well,
was a
thank you for having me.
session.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
sure. Sure thing. So, guys, if you have any questions out there, please do not hesitate to comment on the video. Send us a message at staff@chaponline.com if you have a question for either Gillian or me or anything else about co-ops or groups. We would love to support and help you. And remember, you can always write in and give us suggestions for topics you might want to hear. Like we were at the beginning, we kind of got
Right.
talking about Gillian's situation a little bit. Maybe that's a future episode.
I would love to have that conversation because
So
it was a season in my life that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. But the fact that we were able to get there is an
yeah,
amazing conversation. And if you would
yeah,
like me to talk about it, I'm more than willing to do it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's really good. Well, I've made a note. So
And
so
parents, if you want to reach out to me personally, that's fine as well. I'll have that conversation in private with them as well.
okay, great. Yeah, and you know what? Jillian and I are both listed on the CHAP mentor list. So if you go to resources and go to the mentor tab, we're right on there, and you can reach out to us that way, find out how to get to us through the website. So
Okay.
guys, enjoy training your children to follow Christ in all of life. Enjoy all those steps together, that daily abiding in Jesus and growing together and learning together. Enjoy it. And like I say, always, the sky's the limit. Your education environment is your education environment. You do with it what seems best for you guys, and that is great. Bathing it in prayer always, of course. So next week I will be coming back, and I'm going to be talking about the secondary homeschooling requirements. There's a little bit of confusion with the 7th through 12th versus the 9th through 12th and all the things in the law. So we're going to be clearing that up a little bit. So if that is a question for you, you're going to want to tune in and listen up. So we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.